Listen, I don't know if you know this, but there is a lot of great things happening in the South. In terms of what it means to be black in spirit, black history, black excellence, and I mean overall, there is history that needs to be shared. I want to introduce myself. My name is Frederick Whitlow II, aka most people know me as Extra Fred 2 of No More Dirty Ink. Today is going to be phenomenal. Today, when I say eye-opening, when I say that this document is going to be an amazing thing. And on behalf of myself and DJ Scissorhand, you already know, Brookfield Films, right here in Pulaski, Tennessee, No More Dirty Worldwide, INC. We have a special guest, so check it out. Roll with me. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm glad to see you.
It is so good to see you. We have a living legend. Living as in breathing. I can breathe and she breathes.
Okay. My name is Vivian P. Battle Sims. I have lived here in Giles since 1971. Born in New York City and lived there until I was 17 when I went to this university. And after I left this university and I worked in Nashville as an art teacher until 1971. And then I came to Pulaski. I married Henry Senior, who was the assistant director of vocational technical school. The only one in the state of Tennessee.
The only one in the state.
The only one.
So listen, we have a lot of ground to cover, and we're going to take our time because here's the deal. When we think of Pulaski, Tennessee, and you all know when you think Pulaski, Tennessee in the South, usually there's one historical relic that comes to mind. It is the birthplace of the KKK. But let me tell you something. Before there was a KKK, and before we see what we see, even in light of what we're dealing with in social justice today, there was this amazing sight, this amazing story. And we wanted to make sure that individuals, especially our young people of all, but especially our young people, black and brown, understood the value of and the beauty of being black and being beautiful in America. Not everything in the South has to have a negative look. And so today we're going to spend time with Mrs. Sims, and she's going to share about this beautiful place. Let's talk about the place. Tell us about this place, the Wilkerson Martin Sims House. It's actually on the National Register of Historical Places, right here on this reservation. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
This house was built between 1830 and 1835. Okay. It was built by a gentleman named Francis Wilkinson, who was a contractor, and he built the 5th Giles County courthouse.
Wow.
Now, at that time, this was on the outskirts of town, and he owned not only all of this land here, but all of the land all the way around here, all the way down there about a mile to where his cemetery is now located.
All right.
Okay, Mr. Martin had 6 children. 4 of them lived, and they're buried in the cemetery down the street. Okay. He had 2 daughters who lived. One of them married the mayor of the town, a fellow named Martin, and the other one married a doctor.
All right.
Okay. Now, this building was put up in 1835. Okay. Which is about 30 years before the Civil War.
Wait. 1835.
1835.
And this is literally, so this is literally prior to the Civil War. You hear that? Prior to the Civil War.
Mr. Martin, of course, being a contractor and a builder, he built this house up on a slight hill up here so he could look down and see the courthouse that he had built before he built. And when I moved here in 1971, I married Henry Sims in 1971. Okay? And when I came to Pulaski, all of the Martins had moved someplace else or died away.
Okay.
And so except David Martin. David Martin was living here. He was living in the house. And he married a woman named Martha Abernathy. And they were older when they got married. He wasn't married or he didn't have any children. So when the two of them moved here, David Mark was upset because Henry Sampson bought the house next to him. And there was a black man living next to him. He was
Wow.
a member of the trust family of that black.
Okay, wait. So let's go back. So there was a black man that purchased a home next to this home, to this mansion.
Yes, but he purchased the home in the 1950s.
In the 50s. However, he still owned it at some point.
Oh, he purchased, yes. In fact, I still live there.
And you live in that house now.
Yes.
Listen to me. That's why it's so important. I mean, I'm excited.
I live in the next door.
I am super excited because here's the thing. Here's what I love about what you're saying. So, the reality is, a lot of times we don't see pictures, we don't see narratives of people of color significantly making contributions to our community, to our nation. And you are a woman of color.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, you are so.
I'm really showing up black on the inside. In fact, when I was born in New York City, 1928,
Okay.
That's 92 years ago. Monday, 92
You'll be
years ago.
turning 92 on this coming Monday.
Monday.
Lord have mercy.
And when I was born, my mother and father, who was from North Carolina, and moved up there, my mother and father decided to take me to downtown New York to be born in one of those exclusive hospitals. It cost $35 for me. But I could have been born in Harlem Hospital for free.
Correct. With the Harlem Renaissance and all the great things that happened.
And because so very few black babies were born in that hospital called Lionel Hospital. And so when it got about on my birth certificate, at that time, if you call a person black, they would be angry because that was a dirty word.
Correct.
But when they filled out my birth certificate, they didn't put down a Negroes or colored. We were called colored then. They put black. And when I saw it, I said, you know what? I said, they got it right. And I said, on the outside, I might be like a black, but my whole inside is solid black.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And it's been black all my life. And it gets blacker and blacker by the day.
Right. So let's talk in terms of your education journey and as an educator, because you've shared this. You made it to Nashville, Fisk University. You are now in the form of education. Let's talk about your journey. So, what did you decide to go into as a student and further?
Well, when I was in high school, I was always very good at art, and I decided that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to become an art teacher. And when I was in college, Aaron Douglas was my teacher. And he was one of the renowned artists black artists in the United States. And when I graduated, Cameron School, which is in South Nashville, Cameron School principal wanted to get an art teacher in the school. And I was the first art teacher we hired in the Nashville City Schools. And so I started teaching art there, and this was in 1950 that I started teaching art there. I taught there until it became a high school, which was in the late 1950s. And in 1961, I applied for a Fulbright grant in order to teach in Africa, but they sent me to the West Indies.
All right. Okay. So you just
they sent me to a little island called Antigua, which is 12 miles from one end to the other. It was a vacation. It was like, oh my, you can imagine being on a tropical Caribbean island, and teaching school. It was, man, that was heaven. And so I told all the kids on the island to tell them. I went from one little town to another to teach, and of course I taught in the city of St. John. And I loved it. It was wonderful. I was also, while I was there, I was also a Girl Guide leader, a CRAN. And while I was there, the biggest thing that I did, I took my 12 Girl Guides from Antigua down to Trinidad.
Oh, really?
And we stopped at every island, and we were on a merchant ship. Now, we weren't on a cruise ship, okay? We were on a merchant ship. All of us were in one room, okay?
Wow.
And we stopped at every island all the way down to Trinidad, all the way back. But this 12, this little tiny island didn't have anything like an escalator or elevator or anything. It was just low buildings. It was a rural
area.
tropical island.
Okay.
And so, but I was surprised because I was only in my 30s that their parents would trust me because I was an American. You know? And of course, they were West Indian. And they don't necessarily trust Americans. But they trusted me with their daughters, and I took them all the way to Trinidad and brought them back. I think that was the most unique thing I have ever done in my life, was to take 13 West Indian girls all the way from, and stop at about 10 different outlets.
Wow.
On the way down and on the way back. And so, and that was I think that was one of the most joyous experiences of my entire life. Okay.
Wow.
And then when I went back to Nashville, I became an art supervisor. And so, and in the elementary school, in North Nashville, District 3 in North Nashville. And so I worked as an art supervisor for several years. Well, about the end of the time that I was an art supervisor, I became friendly with a family that was Martha and Henry Sherm. They lived in this house over there.
Okay.
So a friend of mine brought me down here to introduce me to some people that were his friends when he taught here in Giles County.
Okay.
And so, and I'm gonna skip some stuff because I don't want to go through all of that. I eventually Martha died of breast cancer, and a little over a year later, I married Henry Sims, and that's how I got that.
So that was a good connection.
Okay, but see, Sims at that time was the director. He was assistant director of the VOTEC school.
Okay.
And he had 26 VOTEC schools and vocational technical schools in the state of Tennessee, and one of them was here at Pulaski. And when I married him, he was already the assistant director at the school here, and eventually he became the director. And he worked there until he was an educator for 53 years. I was educated for 47.
Wow.
And so together we were 100 years. The two of us were educated.
Wow.
You hear that, sir?
Wow. Let me stop real quick. I think this your life, you and your husband's life, is just is a monument or a testament or testimony that when black minds get together and are intentional about elevating and bringing black excellence and understanding to the community, especially our community, the black and brown community, there's nothing that cannot be kept and held back.
You're right.
I say that. I mean, look at you. You're almost 92. You will be 92 years on this coming Monday.
That's right.
You don't look 92.
Thank you.
You look great.
Don't tell me I look 65. I want to look like a 30.
Well, you wear it well. And we are very appreciative. And I think that's so important, this journey, because when you think about New York, to choosing as a young lady, especially an African-American young lady, to be and to choose to be an educator and do the best you could do for yourself. And because of that, you transitioned to being an educator. And you traveled the world. And you came back to the States. Then you met a good-looking gentleman that was another African-American, chocolate man. And you got married, and you moved down here, and you work with folk like my man, DJ Scissorhands. I'm here. So before we go any further, I got to give a shout-out to my man, DJ Scissorhands, who is also part of the team. And he's a great producer. He's finishing up school. He's doing great. But I want to bring him in right now so that you can get the connection with how being an individual of black excellence and being an educator can impact a young man. So come on in, man. Let's talk.
Hi, everybody. It's your country kinfolk, DJ Scissorhands, better known as Marcus C. Nelson. Original native from Meadowbrook, Tennessee, grew up and raised in Pulaski, Tennessee. Had the privilege of coming through the educational system, getting with this fine specimen of a lady, you know what I'm saying, which motivated me in so many ways, because that was probably the first time I got to experience blackness educating in a school system environment where it changed my whole thought process of what I was being taught and how I was being treated. So I commend her, and it also transitioned through my life as is today.
So let's talk about, when did you first meet each other? When did you meet
Well,
Mrs. Sims?
the connection, I don't know when I met. I probably was in trouble or something before they had come to the office or something. But initially, on a greater aspect, I done arts. I grew up doing art. It's probably why I'm so creative doing technical things. But my art, I used to draw and doodle a lot. We had Miss Sims come through our school system. I'm attentive now, you know what I'm saying? I love this lady. It was different. She's a New Yorker, you know. I'm used to country stuff, you know what I'm saying? But because I was educated in a kind of way that I was influenced by the New York people were smarter than Southern people. It was my thinking as a young child.
Well, that's what a lot of people think, but
Yes.
it's not true.
I let her say it. But what I grabbed from her, was able to sponge from her, was how she articulated her communication with the youth. You know what I'm saying? And what she ultimately did was bring one of my greatest assets out of me to the forefront. She did. Doctor the picture, just a little bit. But it changed the whole thing. We went from seeing the KKK on the front paper for marches to seeing us on the paper. I'm a little naughty-headed black kid, you know, and I have my school teacher that I can represent well. Hey, that was the first for me in second grade, because I was a little world of trouble, you know, mischievous, let me say it. Well, I wasn't in trouble, but mischievous. So, she brought me into a better light where I could make the teacher look good. I made the school look good. We had a pizza party. I'm on the news. Nashville, you know, our media, we didn't have, Nashville was our media. We all over Nashville media from Pulaski. So that was one of the greatest. I still have the scrap papers and everything. Like I told you, that's 1986. That's why I won't forget. I can see it now. Because, you know, I had a scrapbook that I can show my children, you know, because I want them to understand and experience some of the things I was blessed to be introduced to.
This is what's wrong, seriously wrong, with the situation in the school system here in Pulaski. When I came here, there were 26 black teachers in 1971. I think we're down to 4. If we're lucky, we're down to 4. 20% of us, 26% of the African of the population of Pulaski, not Giles County. 26% of the population are African American in Pulaski. 26%.
Wow.
Okay, that's over 25%. Okay.
It's over
And we
40.
only have 4 black teachers, and 2 of them are men teaching in the same school down here.
Right.
We don't have many black children. Okay. And I know from my own experience, and I know from working with children, that if they have role models, they will do so much better. They will try to achieve more. They will learn more. They will see a wider world out there. Whereas their world is so small now. Okay? There's more to this world than just going to school every day and going home after school. There's more things in this world to appreciate and to do. And this is one of my deepest concerns right now. And this is something I'm going to work on before I die. Okay.
And I'm going to help you. Before you say it, I'm already with it, but go ahead.
That's right.
Yes, ma'am. Tell them.
That's what I'm going to
That's what you're going to work on.
So, Scissorhand, what would you say to young parents today that have kids that have a lot of energy, super excited, a little mischief, maybe had come from a lot of brokenness, or
Yes.
just lack of seeing, like Mr. Sims says, having seen, not being exposed? What would you say to them? Because you're a parent and you're doing amazing things, but you had someone do for you.
Yes. Like she said, man, these children we're leading them by example. And then there's a thing too about bridging the gap. See, we the younger generation tend to think they know something, and the communication has been bad and terrible And it may be older folk don't trust younger folk, and young folk don't trust older. It's just a gap there that's been created.
Serious gap.
Serious gap. And what I want to say is, let's fill in the gap. We don't have anything better to do. Most of us growing up in these towns, graduate and get a factory job.
That's right.
That's the dream.
That's right.
I want to make $12, $13 out.
Well, you know what? Because they won't hire you in the city. Okay, I told you 26% of the citizens of Pulaski are African American. You cannot find them in City Hall. You cannot find them in the courthouse. You cannot find them in the schools or the square. You cannot find them in the post office. We have no black representation in the places where our taxpayers' money is paying for the white man to take the job that black men should have.
Yes.
Okay. There's over 11% of the citizens in Giles County themselves are black. Okay. If you go and try to find a black person working in any one of the departments, you cannot find a black person. And I think, how many in the police force? About two? One or two?
Yes, you're correct.
That's right. And 26% of the people in Giles County are African American, and you only have one or two black people working. You can see the discrepancy, and you can see how we are being abused, and I can see how young people want to go and demonstrate, and young people going to change because us old folks didn't do it. Okay, we overlooked it. Okay, we did not make any efforts in order to integrate all of these different places and all of these organizations that have not allowed black people to cross their door. School boards, okay, we do have a black woman on the school board, but you can get another board, the library board. You go to other organizations. And these organizations are taxpayers' money paying for, and we have nobody. The banks don't have anybody on their board.
Right.
They don't hire the people. You can look and see, and we haven't had a black person in the post office in so long. I can't remember when it was. That's in the post office. Okay. And where is the money coming from? Right. We have to go to a factory to make the money, and they tax us, and they take that tax money and they pay white people. They pay white people to work on the job that black people should have.
So it's been a lot of experience. I've been overqualified for jobs.
That's right.
They're
not gonna hire you. That's right.
So I think that's why it's so important that we share this story, because this is the story that needs to be shared.
It needs to be.
So, but we definitely want to say thank you for sharing this part. Now, I'm excited because we're going to go inside. We get a chance to see your husband's picture. You tell us a little bit about that. And we're going to take a tour of this
mansion. You're going to take a tour of the house. And I can tell you the story of the house.
And we'll talk about it in the house.
I have told you that story, yeah.
Right. And then, so this is it. So stay with us. We want to say thanks again for tuning in. This is official, Living Legends. So we want to say thank you so much for staying tuned and locked in on this wonderful, wonderful doc film series. We are here with the illustrious Mrs. Sims. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. How you doing?
Doing well. Listen, this is, like you all saw us on the outside, this is the inside. This is an amazing, this house, mansion. So let's talk about the history. How did you get involved? How did this happen? Did this house become yours actually from the beginning? Let's go back to the beginning. So let's talk about your house across the street. Let's talk about this house and how did this all come about?
Okay. Well, let's talk about this house first, because this house has a lot of history associated with it. Because this house was built in 1830, and when the Civil War had started, it was about 35 years after the Civil War.
Okay.
And this house was the largest house and the most important house on this highway. Now this highway, Highway 31A, goes from Mobile, Alabama to northern Michigan.
Wow.
And this highway, the Interstate 65, takes the place of this highway. Okay.
So wow. So then Highway 31, this was the main thoroughfare.
This was the main.
This was the main. This is from the south to the north.
From south to north. That's
yes,
right.
ma'am.
Okay. And this was one. And when this mansion was built, It was the largest mansion that was in the southern part of the United States on this highway. The Confederates, of course, did not want to have that slave joining the Union Army.
Correct.
And so they tried to discourage them. And in many instances, like they did in Texas, they didn't even tell them that they were free.
That's right.
That's why we have Juneteenth.
That's why we got Juneteenth.
Now,
correct.
why join the Union Army? Well, the main reason, not only did they furnish you with beautiful blue uniforms and shiny buttons.
And you know we like looking good every time. You know, you
dark blue
dreams
tops
petite.
and light blue bottoms. I mean, we look cool in those uniforms. Okay. Not only did they do that, not only did they educate the people because the slaves had not been taught to read and write because their masters did not want them to read and write because you see, education gives you power.
Okay, wait, that's heavy. Wait, we're gonna finish, but this I want you to hear what Mrs. Sims is saying. In order to make this transition out of physical slavery, mental slavery, financial slavery, for us educational slavery, those key components is that one, we have to learn to read and write.
Right.
We have to excel in the areas of college education, finishing high school. And I love what you're saying, and that's why I just want to segue this, and then we'll get back to the story. Listen, it's 2020. And if you are not careful, you will misvalue or think of it as no value to finish your high school diploma.
Right.
To continue to get a trade or get a certification in a 2-year tech school or vocational school, and go to a 4-year institute and end up with a bachelor's of arts and science and move to a master's and then eventually a doctor's. But here's the deal. Even during the time of literal slavery, part of the package of elevation and moving to success was education.
Right.
We got to get educated. We can't say, well, it's the white man's problem. We can't say it's just, I don't know how we'll make it. They made it with nothing.
That's right.
We have FAFSA.
Mm-hmm.
We have scholarships. We have legends that have been educators. We have all kind of black celebrities and African American soldiers and warriors and people who have made it. So I just wanted to take a minute in this documentary and say, listen, it's no excuse. If you get yourself a 40 acres and a mule, you need some education.
That's right.
If you can become a colored U.S. colored troop, they gave them education. Not just an out from physical and emotional mental slavery, but they can bring their family together.
That's right. Amen.
Amen. Wow. So now you were saying you want to go back 150 years because this is deep. So right again, they got their freedom, then they got education. Go back. You were talking about the 150 years. If we go back, share with us.
The slaves were denied everything that was going to give them power, and education would give them power. To be able to read and write, they could find out what was going on.
Come on.
They could find out what was going on in other parts of the world. They could find out how to get up north.
Come on
in order to leave the plantation. So education was one of the most important things to the slaves, to learn how to read and write. And so the first thing that they offered, not only did it look good, which everybody wanted to look good,
and we still do,
because they were slaves and they only had beat up, raggedy old clothes. Okay, and so the second thing, they offered them education, teach them how to read and write and count, and how to grow in the society in which they were living. They had to be educated. And the third thing was the fact they would get some money because they never gotten paid.
So they never got paid. Now you're getting money.
Now you're getting
How
money.
much were they getting paid?
Okay. At first they were only getting $8. Okay. But the white soldiers were getting $10.
Okay.
And so the slaves were only getting $8. But eventually they passed in Washington, in Congress, passed a law that they were to get the same amount as the white soldiers were getting, $10 a month. Well, $10 a month was a tremendous amount of money at that particular time.
So,
But the most important thing they were at was a gun. They got a gun. They got a gun. They could kill, and they were allowed to kill white people.
wait, now let before you go there, let's stop right there. Listen to what she's just said. Freedom, education equals power.
That's right.
You add money to power,
That's right.
and then you add assets. In this case, it was having a rifle or a gun.
That's right.
Now let's go back. Let's look at today. If we're living in ignorance, we're in slavery. No matter what type of slavery it is, like you said. But when you get education, you add education to the ignorance, it dulls down or eliminates the ignorance so that you become an educated black or brown person.
Right.
Then once you get the education, you know how to manage the money.
That's right.
You know, this is crazy because in the street or in common community, I'll put it that way. Let me just say community. We think we got to have the money before we get the education.
No.
Man, if I get this money, then I could go buy this. If I get this money, then I'll go ahead and get my degree.
Okay.
And what happens is it becomes a cycle where we're always paper chasing instead of letting the paper chase us. When you get a degree, the paper has to measure up to your educational degree. Listen to me. Once you get those papers, degrees, certifications, whatever the case may be, dissertations, they have to pay you like they did in slavery day. If a black person had to get the $10 like the white person. So when we walk into an office and you're a CEO, the same salary for me is the same salary for my counter. Wow, this is good. And then you can go buy as many guns as you want or as little as you want. But I think that's good. Okay, so you've explained the four things that the benefits of joining the troops, U.S. colored, becoming a U.S. troop soldier. So, but why is it so? Well, the big question is why.
Okay. Not only are they going to look sharp in their uniform with the shiny gold buttons on it, and not only are they going to be educated, taught how to read and write, and not only are they going to be paid $10, but most important thing, the next most important thing, was they ought to be given a gun. Okay. But the most important thing was to go fighting for their freedom.
Come on.
If they lost, they would go back to slavery. If they won the war, they would be free then. Their children, their wives, everybody in their family would be free. And that's why they fought. That's why the black man who had been a former slave fought for the Union Army.
Wow.
Okay.
You know, that's it right there. I mean, we've heard it from a living icon, legend, educator. After you get all of that stuff, education, your freedom, money,
Freedom.
at the end of the day, if you can if you can manage your time and your person, then you are free. Wow, that is something. And then they knew that if they continued as a group of black people, that the whole ethnicity, all black people would be free.
Right.
And that's how the Union was won. That's how we won. Because the white folks wasn't trying to do it.
That was the most important reason. Wow. There were 200,000. Now here in Giles County, we had 2,400 former slaves join the Union Army.
So that's 2,400 former slaves.
In this county.
Just in this county.
Right. They had 40,000 in the state of Tennessee.
40,000 in Tennessee, 2,400 in Giles County.
And 200,000 in the United States.
200,000
Right.
total in the United States. Do you hear what I'm saying? There's no excuse for us as black men and women, and brown women and men. to be successful. That's why we're doing this. That's why Sister Hannah and I said, listen, we've got to share this. This is more than just historical. This is truth.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it so important to you? You have to tell us why it's so important to share this story.
I think the main reason that I was born to be a teacher. Okay, I really was. I remember teaching my little brother. I had a younger brother, a couple of years younger. And I remember teaching him how to read and write when I first learned how to read and write.
Wow.
And I got such a joy out of it. I knew that when I grew up I was going to be a teacher. And even though I retired many years ago, I'm 92 now, I'm still a teacher.
You are. You teaching us.
Wanting to tell people what the story is. This story, I'll tell you why the story is important. Because most black people don't have the pride in their ancestry and in their heritage because they think the only thing that they know about their ancestors was that they were slaves. If you're black, your ancestors were slaves.
That's heavy. So when you say what you just said, how deep is that? Share more. Give us more, because I think they need to understand as we're learning ourselves doing this.
Okay. As black people, including me, because I didn't know anything about the United States colored troops until I was in my 80s. I didn't know they existed.
Wow.
Okay. When I found out about it, then I found out that my grandparents, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, had served in the United States colored troops. Okay. I found out that almost every person in Giles County is a descendant of one of the United States colored troops, one of the 2,400 colored troops. None of them knows that it existed. Now, why should you know? Because of the pride that your ancestor, your great-great-grandfather, not only was he a slave, but he was a brave soldier, one of the best, one of the best. He fought this war. He fought the Confederates in the Union Army, so that not only could he free all of the slaves, but he fought also in order to give some power to his ancestors, to his children, to his grandchildren, to his great-grandchildren. And we need to know. We need to have pride in our ancestors and the people who fought and died for us in the United States colored troops. Wow. Just like the white man does for his ancestors. They have pride in it. Going all the way back to the Revolutionary War. They got organizations where people would join because their great-great-great-grandfathers was in the Revolutionary War and also in the Civil War. But we don't have that because we don't even know it exists. Because after the war was over, after the war was over, and they had reconstructed, then the white man who still owned a considerable amount of land, who still had power over us even though we were not slaves any longer, they did not want us to know our history. And all these years, all the way down since the Civil War, they have not put it in the history book. They have not told our children. They have not told anybody because they know that once you have pride in your ancestry, you're going to have pride in yourself. And who you are, and what you are, and where you came from. Okay?
You know, Ms.
And that's why it's important for every child, every black child to know that they are descendants of brave warriors who fought and died to give them the freedom that we have today.
Wow.
Okay.
That's heavy. That's heavy. So first of all, we want to say thank you for, really taking time to explain that, because I have never in all the years of my living, I have never heard the real deal on the recruitment of a former slave to becoming a recognized, celebrated U.S. colored troop. My dad, I was born at West Point in New York, upstate. My dad was decorated, respected, Air Force, and my brothers were in the military, and I have never heard this until today. This is why we have to share these type of messages. This is why we have to have these kind of documents and film, and this is just the beginning. So we're going to continue now. Let's talk on the flip side when we come back. Let's talk about the house.
Okay.
And how your family was able to get this house and the house next door.
Okay.
All right, so I love this house. This is great, and you'll get a chance to see some really great pieces in here. There's an antique piano that actually the whole piece opens up. It's almost like a musical chair kind of piano. There's a lot of great stuff. So let's dig in on your husband and how he acquired this home and this property. Sure, could you share that with us?
My husband named Henry Sims. He was born in Salem, in West Tennessee. Okay. That's right outside of Jackson, Tennessee. Okay, he lived on a truck farm with his mother and father and 3 brothers. When he grew up, his mother had been a teacher. And as he grew up, she was determined that all of her sons were going to get a good education. And so she sent them to high school there. But the high school there did not have a school a full year because all the black children had to go pick cotton in the fall of the year. But when he finished school there in Salem or in Humboldt, Tennessee, they all went to Tennessee State University. Okay, my husband went to Tennessee State University and he majored in industrial arts. When he graduated, the principal of the school here, Bridgeport School, was looking for an industrial arts teacher. And he went to Tennessee State, and my husband was looking for a job. And so he came to Pulaski in order to teach the industrial arts. He started out with industrial arts, but ended up, he was teaching students how to build houses from the ground up.
Okay, so let me ask a question. So was he the first black to do that in the city?
Yes. That's right. He was the first, only black.
So you all really are literally pioneers in education.
That's right.
In Pulaski, Tennessee,
That's
Giles
right.
County. Do you hear what's happening here?
And this was in 1945.
1945.
And he came to Giles County. He graduated from Tennessee State.
TSU.
He came to Giles County.
All right, continue.
Okay. When he came here, he roomed with a lady who lived next door to the school. Now, the school is right across from this building in this particular time. The school is still standing.
We saw it. We'll have a picture.
This is Bridgeport High School, still standing. Okay. Well, and so he asked his landlady. He looked up because in West Tennessee, where he was from, there were no hills, and he was admiring the hills that he saw here in Giles County. So he asked his landlady. He said, "Who lives in that house that they're talking about? This house,
big house,
this great big house." Because he was amazed at the size of the house and how beautiful the house was, and it was on a hill almost. And she looked at her, she said, and she was a black woman, of course, and he was black. And she said, "Hey, look, boy, let me tell you something." He said, "That's white folks' property, and don't you look at it, and don't be thinking about it, because there ain't no way you gonna ever get it."
Little did they know.
That's right. Well, I think that made him want it even worse. He really wanted this house. Well, he got married. He married his college sweetheart, and she came here to live. Her name was Martha, and she came here to live. And she taught school here in Giles County. She taught elementary school, and he was teaching the building trades in the high school.
Okay.
Well, after a few years, he lived on what was called Kemp Street, is now West College Street. He lived there in a shotgun house. And then he and his wife finally saved enough money to buy a house. And the house next to his house was for sale. Now, white people lived there because the man who owned this big mansion, who was named David Martin, was married to a woman who was Mary Martin. They were both older, so they didn't have any children when they got married, so they never had children. Just the two of them lived in this house. Well, they built the house next door to this house, across the field from this house. He built the house, David built the house for his nephew, who had gone to Nashville to study dentistry. And he thought he was coming back there so he would have a house to live. But his nephew never came back.
Wow.
So he sold the house to a white couple, who a few years later sold the house to another white couple, who a few years later sold it to Henry and Martha Sims, my husband and his first wife.
Okay, wait. Okay. This is good. Wow. This house we're here, the owner, built a house for his nephew.
Right.
The nephew was going into dentistry,
That's right.
decided not to come back.
That's right.
They sold it out to a white couple, sold it to another white couple,
That's right.
who ended up selling it to
Henry and Martha
your
Sims.
husband's family.
Right. Well, they only had two.
Just at that time,
just
correct.
two.
Wow. So now this property, or there's property on the other side that belongs to a black man. Where does it go from there?
Okay. All right. After Henry and Martha Sims purchased the house, this is a black couple.
So next door.
Both educated. Okay. Purchased the house next door to David Martin.
This house.
This house. This is I call it the big house, but it's a Wilkinson Martin Sims house. Okay. When David Martin found out that a black couple boy, he was incensed. He was so angry. He did not want any niggas living next door to him. And so, but there was nothing he could do about it. Okay, because they had already bought the property. And the reason David felt that way was because he had been a member of the Ku Klux Klan.
Okay.
And I have here.
Wait. This is getting good. The folk, are you going to hear this? This big mansion, which is the largest mansion literally in Giles County and one of the historical sites, is next to a house, kind of a parish, that was owned by a black man, Mr. Sims. And the guy who owns his house was a member of the KKK. Sure.
And I have the truth right here.
Yeah, sure. Wait, look at this. Okay.
And it says on here, the Colombian Union Supreme Clan of the world. Okay.
Wow.
And then it goes down, it has David Martin through here, Pulaski Tennessee. And the date of this, that this was made was the 22nd day of May of 1919.
1919, excuse me.
Right.
Wow.
1919.
This guy was the top KKK wizard.
That's right. And now, because I'm going to tell you in a minute how Sims got this, how he got this.
Okay.
Because I'm sure that not very many black people have a manifesto of Ku Klux Klan.
True that.
Okay, now. Well, David built a chain link fence that went all around that house, all of his house, because he owned all the property up here, property across the street, all the way up there,
Right, correct.
And so he decided, well, the one thing he was going to do, he was going to keep those black folks off of him. And so he built a chain link fence that went all around that property, all the way down to Highway 31A, which is the main, right down to the street. Well, when Henry Sims asked him, he said, Mr. Moore, why did you build a fence? And David Martin told Henry that the reason he built the fence was to keep his animals off the Sims' property. Well, David said, well, why do you build a fence with the other people who live here, the white people who live here? Why do you build a fence around that? Because it's the same animals that you keep it off of me, that you should have been keeping off of them also.
Right.
And he had no answer to that question.
Wow.
Okay. Well, and so Sims realized he knew what David Martin didn't want him to live next door to him. He didn't want a black man living next door to him. But he just went on and played it cool and didn't upset the apple cart because he wanted to live here because he thought this was a nice place to live.
I got
you. After a few months, about 3 or 4 months after Sid moved here. David Martin, whose bedroom was right across the hallway, fell out of bed. Well, these old beds way up high. He fell out of bed, and his wife wasn't able to pick him up and put him back in the bed. He was very sick. And so his wife didn't know, it was late at night, his wife didn't know who to call because it was so late. So she called her next door neighbor, Henry Sims.
Mr. Sims, the black man.
The black man. And she told her, she said, my husband is falling on the floor. I can't get him out. Can't get him up and put him back in the bed, and I need help really bad. And so Sims said, well, call the doctor. There was a doctor there named Dr. Spear. At that time, doctors would go to your house in order to take care of you.
Correct.
And so David, and so Henry and his wife, named Martha, walked down to the highway where traffic was going back and forth. Walked down the highway, that's the main north-south highway. Walked across, came back up the driveway, came back in, and Sam, who was young at the time, picked up big old heavy baby and put her in the bed.
Wow.
Okay. Then the doctor came, and the doctor left some medicine for David and told his wife to stay, make sure that he was doing all right. Stay with him until he was asleep. Make sure he was doing all right. He wanted to call him back, but he wanted someone to be with her, with David, or waiting David, watching David, to make sure that he would go to sleep and he would rest with him. So Sam's mom, his wife Martha, and David's wife Martha, sat there for a couple of hours having a conversation with her, waiting for David to go to sleep. By the time he went to sleep, the two Marthas had become good friends.
Wow.
And this started a relationship between David and Henry Sims and the two Marthas. Well, the two Marthas realized that they have a lot in common. And so they would meet in shaming friends. And they would share pies and cakes and tell stories. And because the Martha Sims was working, but Martha Martin wasn't working. So she was glad to have somebody to talk to. Because it was just she and her husband were all two people living in this grand big house. Well, and of course
Right, so we learned about the house. You got a husband out the deal and all of that good stuff, right? So let's talk, as we finale, right? Let's talk in terms of the house itself, the officers that might have been here, and the organizations that you and your husband have helped to establish and achievement. So why don't you share that?
Okay. After the Civil War was over, the family lived in the house, and the officers left and went to their homes in the north. And the members of the United States Colored Troop then occupied this whole area in Pulaski. Wow. And this is the reason why this section, the north section of Pulaski, is primarily African American. Because the officers of the United States, not the officers, but the troops who were up on the hill, who were the 110th and 111th Regiment, they couldn't go back home. And so they had to go someplace. And so they had gotten a $500 fund from the United States for having been in the service. And so they used that in order to develop the north end of town. Awesome. And so even up to the day, the north end of town is predominantly African American or black. Okay, now, but after Henry Sims bought the house, and Martha Martin moved all of her things out of the house, the Sims let the house just sit here, and he didn't do very much to keep it in repair. So the house began to deteriorate for several years. And he stored furniture in the house, people's furniture, because they didn't have these storage buildings like they have now. And so he stored furniture in the house. And in at the end of 1998, the Historical Society asked him if he would please restore the parlor, and that's the parlor, and the front, in the front of the building, this area of the building, so that they could have a tea, because this was the most important historical building in Giles County.
Wow.
And of course, it had deteriorated very badly by that time. Well, Sims and I got together and we painted the room over there and shined up the what furniture. We didn't have this much furniture at the time. And Sims then also painted this area out here and got it ready for the tea. Okay, the Historical Society had a tea, and about 300 people came that day to visit because they were so interested in the building and so interested in what was going on. Well, that motivated him to go ahead because he was a building trades teacher, and so therefore he was in the right field to be able to restore the entire house by himself, by hiring labor or asking people to come to help him to restore the building. And so by himself, with the people that he hired, he restored the entire building to what it is today.
Wow.
Okay. Now, after the building was restored, then we had to have a use for the building. And okay, now in the 1970s, early 1970s, I had become involved with an organization that was called Association for, and this is a word we don't use anymore, but this is what it was called, Association for Retarded Citizens. Okay, and then with the association, the state of Tennessee decided that they wanted to have a program for the adult retarded citizens who were not in school, who were beyond schooling. And I was at that time the president of the association, which was really very much like a PTO or PTA. I was working out of Bridgeport School, teaching every kid in Giles County, every elementary child in Giles County, and because of my interest in children who had developmental problems, they had asked me to be the president.
All right.
Okay, because I was the president of the Association for Retarded Citizens, and the state was trying to organize programs for the adults who were developmentally disabled, particularly those who did not have an opportunity to go to public school because the schools would not allow them to come in there at that time if they had severe emotional or mental issues.
Wow. Okay.
Well, we had to have a place to start it. And so Henry Sims, my husband and I, decided that no better place than this building. And so Henry had already renovated the entire building. Of course, we didn't have anything special going on at that time. And so we allowed them to come. In fact, we did not charge them for coming in the building, and they started their first program in Giles County, which is now called the Impact Program.
Wow.
Okay. And it's still going strong.
Let me interject. The Impact Program that you're talking about, and I travel a lot, is really a national program. It's all over the place. So this is monumental. This is a major accomplishment because really, when you think about how you and your husband took the time to develop this place, restore it, it's a historical landmark, and then on top of that, you made it available to the community. That really is that's beautiful. That's really what we should be doing. That's amazing. So continue, and then what happened?
All right. Well, not only did we organize that particular program, but it happened that the senior citizens, the state senior citizen organization, wanted to start senior citizen centers in all of the counties. We did not have one here in Giles County, and so the gentleman at the time who was the head of the county court asked my husband, because I hadn't been here for 2 or 3 years, he didn't know me, asked my husband if he knew anybody who would serve on the board in Columbia, Tennessee, for the senior citizens, so we could establish programs in this particular developmental district. And so my husband said, well, my wife would be good at that.
The art teacher, now historian. You're the art teacher, historian.
That's right.
That's
right. And look, I've already worked with this other organization, and so And so he asked me, and I said, yeah, I think that's a good idea because we do need a place, because I was in my 40s at the time. I said, I'm going to get old one of these days and I'm going to need that senior citizen. And so, and he had a house, a little house that had been the servants' quarters that was outside of this building at that particular time. And so I went to the board meetings that they had, and I found out that only one county in this developmental district had a senior citizen center. And so I went to the recreation center, and there was a group of elderly people who met there once a week. And I asked the director of that group if they would help me to get a center started. They said no, they didn't want to have anything to do with the federal government. I said okay. And so I went back to the county executive, and I asked her, and I said, well, look, I said, I'm having a little problem. I said, I think I'm going to have to have a meeting with the people in the county to ask them if they want a senior citizen center. And if they do, then we will go ahead and get one started. Well, I did. We had a meeting at one of the churches here, and I was amazed at the number of people who were interested in starting a senior citizen center. And so from that, we got a board together, and I became the chairman of the board.
Okay, that's 3 things you picked up quickly. You picked up quite a few things on your way.
I sure have. You don't know, honey.
So how did it turn out?
Oh, fantastic. Well, and so since I talked about sitting down, at first I was working full time teaching every child in Giles County, going from school to school every day, which was a task in itself. So what I would do when I got off from work, which was across the street in the old Bridgeville School, I would come over here in this building that was out there, and I would get it organized. First we got a green bus. It was a school bus, but it was a little short green bus. And then we started a program where we would feed the senior citizen, and we started it in the old Bridgeville School over there.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and then we started a Meals on Wheels program.
Okay.
And that was in the winter time, and it was freezing out there. It was ice on the ground. I delivered the first Meals on Wheels to the different, because it wasn't any school because it was ice on the ground.
Wow.
Okay, and I delivered.
So what happened after that? This is exploding, it seems to me.
It got to the place, it was such a burden for me to run all of these programs and work full time that I realized we had to hire someone. So I hired Janet Van Zandt, who came and worked over 20 years as the director.
Wow.
Okay, as the director, she and the board built a beautiful building up on the hill on east of him. And today the senior citizens is still operating, it's still going, and now I can go, I have some place to go.
Well, see, that's so okay. So
see, I had to tell that it was a success because
that's a full
it
success
started
story.
here, okay?
Yeah.
And it's going on now, full black. No, in fact, they go open it tomorrow. Yeah, you know, from the virus that we've had, you know, it's been closed because of the virus, so then they're going to open it back up tomorrow. Mm-hmm.
So, wow, we've covered a lot of territory. We've covered a lot of the story here at the house.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the soldiers. We talked about how they received their freedom, what they did, and how they moved into this wonderful neighborhood that has now we call the city of Pulaski, Tennessee, and Giles County. As we wrap up, because I really want to wrap this thing in a really cool way. So, after you've done all of this, you, your husband, you've made inroads literally for years and almost a century. What would you tell those like us that are wanting to make a difference and be the difference in our community? What would you say? I want you to look in the camera and I want you to say what it is that's, you know, this is you giving us a last hoorah, let's go. This is what I want you to know. This is the real deal.
Oh, well, this is really what I want you to know.
Okay.
I have spent all of the years I've been here since 1971 working in the community and for the community and for the children of Giles County. I write a column in a newspaper that I've been writing for several years
All
now.
right. Okay.
Okay. I'm still writing a column. Okay. And I have become involved in so many different organizations that I have either helped to organize or I've helped to succeed. I believe this. You cannot sit back and do nothing. If you're going to live a full life, you're going to have to give of yourself. And I don't mean give of yourself looking for somebody to give you money for doing the job you're doing. Because money is not the most important thing in life. The most important thing in life is the accomplishments you make to help other people. To help other people in many different ways. And you can always find some way to improve the environment, especially if you're black. Because we have some serious issues as black people, as African Americans. You can't just sit back and pretend that you don't have to do it. You have to do something. You have to go about. If you see some need, if you see that some children have nothing to do, nowhere to go, think about how can you start an organization as we have started here in this building. We started a tutoring program. How can I start it? How can I work in order to improve my environment and the people around me? If we sit back and say that we can't do anything, then nothing will ever get done. If you take on the responsibility and don't see to it the things that need to be done get done, then there's no need you taking on a responsibility.
Wow.
And so you have to realize you're not going to live but one time. Okay. And the most important thing in living is not achieving for yourself. It's not getting rich, because what good is it dying, a rich man dying? Okay, you can't take it with you and you can't spend it.
Correct.
And so what you need to do is to share what you have, to give what you can, and to be there willing to help anybody who needs help, particularly when it's our children and our elderly and our sick people and our homeless. Okay? We have to do that. And so I encourage everybody, look for some way to serve. It could be in the church. It could not be in the church. There's a health center down the street that needs food all the time. You can take some food down there. You can give them some money so they can help somebody with their rent. Okay? You can do something if you look around and find something to do. And what it does for you personally, it gives you a feeling that you can't get, even if you're the richest man in the world. You can't get the feeling of accomplishment. You have accomplished something worthwhile. They make your life having been worth living. And that's what I like to tell people.
Well, I'll tell you what. It's been said. It's been done. And we want to say thank you on behalf of DJ Scissorhand, who was your student in the first grade, and on behalf of myself, Minister Fred, too, No More Dirty, Brookville Films, and we want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for sharing a little bit of your life, a little bit of your husband's life, a little bit of the history of this house, and literally, historically, the U.S. colored troops. All right, so welcome back. First of all, on behalf of DJ Scissorhand and yours truly, Minister Fred, too, we want to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time to literally stop your life, stop your schedule, and check out this amazing video documentary. This is a part of the documentary series that we collaboratively are doing so that we can make a difference in our community. It's one thing to talk about black and brown excellence. It's another thing to actually see it, hear it, experience it, and actually sit next to it, live and ledge. So, on behalf of No More Dirty, Inc., Strictly Jesus Records, and also Strictly Jesus, Inc., and my man, you already know, Brookville Films, right here in P-Town, we want to say thank you. Now let's get right in. All right, Ms. Sims, thank you for sharing so much information as it relates to the black troop soldiers and the cavalry and giving us a really great perspective on why we should know how invaluable we really are as a people, as a community, and even more so Black excellence as it relates to what we are able to accomplish when we think, believe, and do. But we wanted to finale, and some of you all have seen it before, but some of you watching this first, but we wanted to just kind of just salute you and congratulate you and celebrate you in terms of you and your family. If you had no family, there would be no you. And because of your family, and we're going to talk about how this came about, we have you. And at age how old?
92.
92 years old. We have almost a century.
That's right.
Of living history. And so let's dig right in and let's talk about your family. Now you had two sides.
Right.
Let's talk about your mother's side first,
Okay.
and then we'll talk about your father's side.
Okay. My family originated in Nash County, North Carolina. Okay, that's on the East Coast, close to the Virginia line, the northeast coast of North Carolina. In fact, my mother's family and father's family began in not only in Nash County, but one of them was a family who was the most prominent family on the east side, and then the other one was the most prominent family on the west side of the same county.
Wow.
And I have information that was in the Rocky Mount newspaper when they had their bicentennial. They had a page, and I have it over here on display.
And we'll show
But they had a page where they were discussing the most outstanding African Americans who had lived in that county. And fortunately, they named the man, my grandfather, William Mann, and also my grandfather on my father's side, okay, was John Dorsey Battle. And so both of them were named in the same column of the newspaper. My aunt sent me the copy of the newspaper, and I have the original copy here.
And we'll show that right now. So the Mann family.
Okay, I want to tell you first about the Mann family. That was my mother's family. My mother was named Era Lee Mann. Her mother was Lula Lynch. Her father was William T. Mann. Okay, William T.'s father was William M. Mann. Okay, William M. Mann's father we're not sure about because he was born in slavery. Okay. When he was a young man in his early 20s, the Union, they had the war between the states, and the Union Army was fighting the northern states, and it happened that the northern states freed the slaves, and they organized the United States Colored Troops. And my grandfather was just the right age, and he joined the United States Colored Troops.
Wow. Okay.
Now, that was a fantastic thing to happen, because when he was mustered out, of course, he got about $500-600 in mustering out money. Well, the William Mann's father owned the plantation, and so he went to his father and asked his father, well, what's the best thing to do with the money that I have? And his father, who was a slave master, of course he wasn't a slave any longer because he had been freed when the Civil War was over. And he said, well, let me tell you something. He said, the best thing to do with your money is to invest it in a farm. He said, not only will you have enough food to feed your family, but it will increase in value over the years, and you have food to sell, and so therefore you can become a prosperous man if you buy a farm. And he did. And I have on the table over there, the deed for that particular farm, which is over 150 years old.
All right, and so the other point of this is...
Okay, well, William M. Mann, who had been in the United States Colored Troops, okay, took the money and he bought a farm that's 150 years old.
Wow.
And and it was passed down from generation to generation. And the person who owns it now is my cousin, my first cousin, William M. Mann,
Wow.
and his two brothers own the farm at this time.
That's awesome.
Okay, which is very unusual for a black family to hold a farm over 150 years.
Wow,
Okay.
that is amazing.
Okay. And you will see some pictures over there with the farm, on the farm, including my mother and my grandmother. Okay, now my grandmother, who lived in Whitaker, North Carolina. Yes, it's Whitaker. Okay, lived in Whitaker, North Carolina. Married. She was a Lynch, L-Y-N-C-H. Okay, her family were freed slaves.
Okay.
They were not slaves at the time when she was born and brought up. They were always freemen. And she married, and her family were builders. And so they built many houses in the area, including the church that my grandfather founded in Nash County called Man Chapel African American Episcopal Church. That church is still a very active church. The church is, I believe, about 145 years old now.
Wow.
And when I went to the family reunion 2 years ago, I visited the church. The church was packed with people in the rural area. This is out in the country now.
All right.
And it's a rural church. And so the church is really still active now, up to today. In fact, I have the whole service on my computer because someone taped the service and sent it to me. And I have that service on the computer. Okay, now, William Mann was a very prosperous farmer. He was the first black person in Nash County to buy a car. He only drove the car on Sundays. Okay?
He was bling-blingy. He was bling-blinging, y'all. He was just like, hey.
That's right. He only drove the car on Sunday. Okay. He married his wife Lula during the war, during the Civil War, and after the Civil War, Lula and William had to drive all the way across the county on a horse and wagon, in order to get their marriage certified by the county, because they passed a law that the former slave who had married before the Civil War would have to come in and get married again in that county.
So let me interject. Mm-hmm. This is very important. One, I think it validates the value of marriage.
That's right.
And so where there is the beauty of coming together, living together, understanding, but the icing on the cake is when you could say, listen, we are together, we wholeheartedly love each other, mm-hmm. and the next step is to take it to the level of marriage, or the ring, or the wedding band, or whatever the case mm-hmm. may be, so that you're not only doing something that, of course, God has always ordained, but you're doing something that builds prosperity in your family. Mm-hmm. So this gentleman said, listen, we're going to do better than just be wealthy. We're going to be honorable with our wealth. Go ahead.
Right. Okay. Now, they had 5 children. William and Lula had 5 children. Okay, my mother was one of the children.
Okay.
And I have a picture here with Lula and her daughters on the picture. I also have a picture of 4 of the 5 children, because one of them died in childbirth, but before the picture was taken on the farm.
Wow, that is amazing. I think what's really great too, before you continue, is that I love that not only are you sharp, but you have been able to capture all of this history. That's amazing. That is amazing.
It really is. Uh-huh.
That's amazing.
That's the advantage of being really old.
Right. No, that's being beautiful and aging well. That's aging well. Listen,
right.
92, I get to 92, I should be looking so good. They're going to be like, oh. You know what I'm saying? So, all right, so tell us more about your family. Your mom arrives.
Okay. I would like to say that my family has been was not only a prosperous family, but it was an intellectual family. Because my grandmother was a teacher. This is also on my father's side. My grandfather was a teacher and founded a school, but we'll talk about that side of the family later. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And therefore, the children grew up well educated, which was not the same with all of the children right after the Civil War. Okay, they were trying to get education, but see, my grandmother was already well educated because she belonged to a freedman. She was belonged to a family that was free, and so that all of that family was well educated. And you can look at the pictures they have, the way they dress and the way they look. Okay, now my grandfather was first a Baptist. This is William Mann. Was first not William Thomas, but William M. Mann, who had been a slave. Okay, William Mann was first a Baptist. Okay, but African American Episcopal deacon came through and was asked to stay at their house. They had at that time it was a really nice house, and he talked to them and convinced William Mann that he should become an African American Episcopal, a member of that AME church. Which he went and got his neighbors, brought them all to his house, and they all decided to form a church. They named the church after my grandfather, who gave the land for the church. And they named it Man Chapel, AME Church.
Wow. Did you hear this? Listen. A freedman marries another beautiful woman, has 5 kids. The mother of this lovely lady. Next thing you know, a minister comes in and says, listen, you're doing great things with the gospel, but you need to add some color to this thing. AME shows up. Then all of a sudden, next thing you know, is that the whole neighborhood, again, community, comes together for the betterment of community and faith. Then what happened? Wow.
Okay. Let me go back a little bit.
Right.
My grandmother, Lula, her father, whose picture I have here with the family, mother and father. Okay, her father had 10 children. Okay,
Wow.
She was something like the 4th or the 5th child. Okay, one of the children was named Mark. My grandmother was Lula. Mark was older than Lula. Okay, Mark had a daughter. Okay, her daughter went to Washington to live and married a man in Washington. Okay, his name was Holmes, Holmes. Okay, and she was her name and her daughter, which was my Aunt Vila. Okay, was her daughter, whose name Aunt Vila, had 2 children. Okay, one of the children, 2 daughters. One of the daughters is now serving in Congress. Her name is Eleanor Holmes Norton. Eleanor Holmes Norton is her daughter, right? She's been in Congress. She has been in the United States Congress for about 25 years. Okay?
Wow.
She represents the city of Washington. Her other daughter, who is an educator, has been the president of 2 different colleges, and a few years ago she came to Tennessee State University, and she was the interim president for 3 years while they were searching for the president that they had at the time. Her name was Portia Holmes Shield.
Wow.
She was the interim president of Tennessee State University for 3 years. Okay, before they hired the present president. She's now living in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
She and I communicate all the time, and we're dear friends.
Okay. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Okay. Now this is also on the man side. Okay. My aunt had a son. In fact, she had 3 sons, and her second son became the dean of medical school at Howard University.
Really?
That's right.
And what's his name?
His name was Dr. Warren Kelly Ash.
Dr. Warren Kelly Ash.
And he was the dean of medical school at Howard University.
Wow. Shout out to our HBCUs. Again, we're talking about synergy, we're talking about intellect, we're talking about taking the time to be great. And that's why it's so important. All right.
Okay. Now, Era had a daughter. That's me.
Okay, and another daughter. Okay. The living legend, y'all. The living legend.
Okay. Well, that's another story.
Right.
I moved to Pulaski in 1971. And I married Henry Sam and moved to Pulaski in 1971. And I think that might be another session we might have for all of the things that I have accomplished since I moved to Giles County.
So let's do this. Can you give us a few of those things that you've accomplished?
Oh, yes, I
and then we'll talk about your other side of your family. Let's do that. I think that would be a great way.
Okay.
Just a little bit. We can always go on more, but I think that would be great.
Okay.
So some of the things that you have been able to accomplish.
Okay. When I came to Giles County, I was 41 years old. I had been married before. I was 41 years old. I didn't know this was the birthplace of the Ku Klux Klan, or I never would have married any son. Okay.
She said, "Well, no, I might have to make another trip." I'm glad you came.
Okay, and since I've been here, I've been very active in community activities. This is where my heart is. My heart is fixing things I find is wrong. Okay, and if I can fix them, and many things I have been able to fix. Okay, I founded the Giles County Senior Citizens right here in this building. Correct. I also founded the Impact. Now, Impact is an organization that services the adult intellectually disabled. Okay. And I founded that organization in the 1970s in this building.
In this building here.
Right here in this building. Okay. I have also founded several other organizations. I've had a tutoring service that we have and all of this was free. Okay.
Wow.
The tutoring service that I had that I started through the NAACP. By the way, I'm a 30-year life member of the NAACP. Okay.
NAACP?
That's right.
All right. 30 years, lifetime member.
That's
wow.
right.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. I agree with that. Okay. I was the first black principal hired in Giles County. First, I was first black assistant principal. Then I became the first black principal hired in Giles County, and I was the principal of Southside Elementary School, which was a brand new school when I moved into the school. And I was the principal there from 1991 to 1998. And I was the assistant principal for 4 years in the elementary school. And that was a tremendous accomplishment because imagine them in the birthplace of Ku Klux Klan, getting a Yankee, getting a black woman, to be a principal of a school here. Okay, I would honestly believe. I think if you asked anybody whether I was a good principal, did you go to? Okay, did you think I was a good principal?
That's DJ Scissorhand.
Okay.
She taught him.
Well, I think I was really a very good principal. I started a lot of different activities that helped the boys who were failing in school. I found that the black boys were failing because they didn't have role models in the home. So I brought in role models for them, those who needed them. Okay. I also decided that the children did not have opportunity, especially the African American children. I had 20% were African American. We had 500 children. But they did not have an opportunity to learn how to save their money, what to do with their money. I happened to pass by the service station, and some boys were coming out, and the pennies they had, now these are boys from the project, they threw them away. The pennies weren't any good. I said, they got to learn something about money. Correct. And so I started a bank.
Wow.
That's right. Were you there when you had? No. Okay.
So you started a bank?
In the school.
In the school? Wow. Wait. Okay.
No, I ain't know none of that.
Wow.
That was early on.
Wow. So you started a financial institution within an elementary school.
Right.
This is why we always do behind the scenes. These are things that you would not know that have impacted the whole Giles County, not to mention specifically Pulaski, Tennessee, and Mahomie, and all the thousands of people you have impacted over these 30-some years. That's a lot of years.
Okay. I had started the bank when I started teaching in Cameron School in 1950, right out of college. Okay, the very first Christmas. Of course, I'm from New York City, and we never had Christmas parties because it's too many different races and too many different religions and to have a religious party.
Right.
And so when I started teaching in Cameron, I had no idea that I would have to have a Christmas party. And when I had the Christmas party, I told the children to pay at least 50 cents for that Christmas gift. But when they came in the room with the Christmas gift, I did not know to write down who brought what. And so it ended up that some of the children who brought a Christmas gift did not get it again because some children didn't bring it, and I didn't know who it was, so I gave everybody $1.
She said, I'm the boss here.
That's right, so they start crying, yeah. The next year I started a bank in that school.
Okay.
I started a bank. The parents were sending money for the bank. Now this is like 1951. Okay?
Wow.
And I eventually and it was so popular. Every day I went home with a big bag of change because they could put any amount of money in the bank because this is way back when the people were very poor, okay?
Correct.
And this was in South Nashville, in Cameronville. And then I found out how popular it was because the children and their parents had never put anything in the bank and didn't know the advantage of saving a few pennies at a time, you know, and it would add up. Well, and so when I became the principal, and when I became principal of Southside, I said, I need a bank because I have poor children here who've never been in the bank. Their parents have never been in the bank. They don't know any value, especially when I saw those boys throw that money on the ground. Because I went and picked up those pennies, okay? Okay, and so I started a bank, and I also started I would call it a mentoring club with mostly for the black boys because they were failing on their standardized tests. And when I investigated to find out why, they had nothing wrong with their IQ. They were all average or better IQ. Okay, and then I kept going through their records, and I found out that those who were failing didn't have fathers in the house or didn't have a father. And so I got some men from the community to come to mentor those boys. And would you believe everyone the schools went way up on their standardized tests. Their behavior was better. I didn't see them in the office anymore because these men would come, and I call them buddies. These buddies would come to see the boys and to take them to walk through the cafeteria with them, which was so important to these boys because they never had anybody to come and walk through the cafeteria with them. And to get them even to sit and talk to them and then go and check with the teachers to see how the boy was doing. And that motivated every boy to succeed. And those who've been coming to the office regularly never came again. Okay.
So I love that again, and I have to stop and just commend you for taking the initiative as a educator to say, listen, our black boys, our brown boys are falling through the cracks. And it's not based upon, and I love that because I work in housing and it's the same thing. It's not that they're ignorant.
No,
it's not that they don't have a great IQ, average or better. It's that they don't have connectors that motivate.
There we go, motivation.
Now I want you to share just in brief, and then we're going to move on to your other side of the family. When you said on just a few seconds ago, you said that you begin to reach out to people. What were some of those population groups?
What's the what?
The population group, the people that you reached out to be mentors.
I reached out because look, I had white children and black children. 20% of them were black. Okay, I reached out to all the children, male children first, because the girls were not doing as badly as the boys were, and white and black, but was predominantly black. because I didn't have that many white boys that weren't doing as well as the black boys.
Correct.
Okay. And so I reached out to them, and those boys, in fact, even up to today, some of those boys still have the relationship with that buddy that they had when we were in the South Side. Because that man fathered them and motivated them all the way through school.
You know what? Before we talk about your other side of family, even today, we were preparing to do the final on this segment. A young man came by today who said, Ms. Whitlow, this lady right here has been with me since high school. She's my friend. And he is a very prominent person in the community. So again, I think this is important that we share who those people are like yourself that are great motivators. 92 years of motivation. And here we are in a new century, new decade, doing great things. And we can still glean from the amazing people like yourself. So, wow, all this on your father's side. Now let's talk in terms of your mother's side.
Okay, my mother was 19 years old, and she wanted to move to New York City because she heard the streets were paved with gold. And she said the first man who offered to take her to New York City, she's going to marry him. So she married my father in 1927, and I was born in New York City in 1928.
Wow, and that's a year before the Great Depression.
Right, that's what I'm getting ready to tell you about.
Okay.
Okay. My mother was very, very conservative. Have I said this before about with our money?
So that's 1 year before the Great Depression. So
That's right.
wow.
They had been married 9 months and 1 day when I was born. And it was just before the Great Depression.
Right.
So my father got a job making $30 a month.
Wait, $30 a month?
A month.
Not a day.
day.
A month.
Oh, right. As an elevator operator. Okay. My mother started taking in sewing. She was a seamstress, and so she started a building in the ground floor, because we lived in an apartment, a cold water flat on the ground floor of a house in Harlem, in New York City. And so she started a business center and made dresses for like $5 a dress. Okay. And so, but she was very, very good at saving. Okay. And eventually, she bought 2 houses. We moved to Brooklyn. She bought 2 houses in Brooklyn, and with apartments to rent out in the houses.
Wait. So I gotta stop here. This is amazing. I want to say this. It doesn't matter where you start. How, like you said, your mom and them lived in a major level of poverty, but they were frugal with their finances, and they took the little extra and began to become landlords and property owners with the little extra from what they were raising from making these, that is amazing. So I just want to say that, listen, just because you live in a level of poverty or the working poor or lower middle class, if you save your money,
Right.
and if you invest well,
Right.
you can be a wealthy person.
Right.
Starting from the bottom to the top, and let it be clean, no more dirty style. Go ahead.
That's right. Okay. Well, when my mother eventually owned, I told you, 2 houses and with an apartment center, and so my mother was always extremely conservative with her money. In fact, she used to hide it in her girdle. Okay. At that time, all women wore girdles. Okay. We didn't let our flag move around. Okay. And she hid her money in her girdles. And sometimes it was staying there so long she couldn't even see what the money was because she would wear the money out in her girdle. Okay?
Wow.
And so, but she knew, and she also invested in many different banks. She never used one bank. She said, in case the bank goes bad, they won't take all her money. And so she invested really well, and she lived well. Okay, and she traveled all over the world, and she bought 2 houses over here on Washington Street that that I still have, as investment. One of them she lived in, the other was investment property. Okay, and so it doesn't make a difference how you start out. It's not what you make. It's how you manage.
Come on now, say that again. It's not how you what
It's
you
not
make.
what you make. It's how you manage it. Right. Okay. And she was a perfect example of that. Now the same thing with my husband. He started out in a truck farm in West Tennessee, and after he moved here, to Pulaski in 1945, he came to teach in Pulaski, Tennessee, and not only did he grow to be, was he successful and became the director of the Votech School here in Pulaski, the first black director in the state of Tennessee at the Votech School here in Pulaski. Okay.
So let me stop here. And this is the same school, you all, that my buddy DJ Scissorhand is graduating and had just graduated from. Kudos to my man. Kudos to this. And he was the first black in Pulaski, Tennessee, Giles County, right?
Right. And and he's the only school that they have in the state of Tennessee that was named after him. His name was Henry H. Sims. And on the outside of the school, they named the administration building after him. You see a great big name, Henry Hugh Sims Administration Building.
Let's show a picture of that real quick before we go.